So I don't necessarily like to prescribe or subscribe to judgment being a bad thing, because if we bring awareness to it, it's a doorway to freedom.
Welcome back to another day of the podcast Second Wind. I appreciate everyone joining today. And if you would, please hit the like button and subscribe, because we've got just such great information to share with so many of you out there. And this continues to help support the channel and spread the inspiration, to as many people as we can. And today with me is Dominic Antonelli, right? Okay. Yep. And Dominic, wow. I met you several years ago, all right? A number of years ago. And I was so impressed with the strength of your spirit. I was so impressed with how your attention in the moment and your level of awareness. And I knew you were a light worker, a spiritual leader as soon as I met you and saw you. And today, to be able to have this opportunity to be on a podcast together, and be able to have you as a guest is a real honor to me, and I know to the world. So I'd like to start out a little bit about, your story of awakening, or you're very involved, and I'm going to let you explain that, in healing modalities that are helping people. And a really cool thing that I just found out right before we started, you are also a musician, and you sing and you write songs, and you have incorporated this into your healings that you do with groups and people. So we'll get into that too. So this is really exciting. So Dominic, what really started you on this path of, I would say it's going within, then without.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate what you just shared, Judy. I really felt it. And I'm just super grateful for you seeing me in the ways that you do. So thanks. For me, this journey just keeps winding. I remember the first thing that happened, I was 16. And I snuck off to a music festival. I told my parents I was going camping, which I was, but I didn't tell them where. And in that weekend, I was introduced to Reiki and MDMA. And having those two experiences so close together completely brought me out of the numbness that I was in from being a little child and having some adverse experiences at home. And it just made me feel like, wow, I can feel there's something different going on here that I was not aware of. So that was the spark. And it really shifted a lot of how I was seeing and interacting with the world. I was still in high school and still in that kind of container, which was strange because I just had something so vastly different come into my awareness, and a whole new operating system being encouraged, or just kind of flashing the light on that. And then over the years, I just started seeking out different opportunities. I was living very, very unconventionally for the rest of my late teens and through my mid-20s. I was working with different energy workers. One in particularly, she is a shamanic energy worker. But by the way, I'm originally from Pittsburgh, and a lot of this was happening in Pittsburgh. And then I started studying. I studied Reiki, and then that just really opened the door to more intuitive faculties and doing intuitive energy work. I studied at a yoga and meditation school in Thailand for about 6 months, and I was there for about eight total in the country for about 8 months, and at the school for six. And I lived in Costa Rica for a little while. And it just has always felt like stepping into the unknown and embracing faith and trust, especially in moments where I wanted to give up, and there were lots of them. But something like a still small quiet voice
Mhm.
would come in and say, no, this is what you need to do. And so much doubt was there, but it's like, no, I need to go and do this. And that's happened a lot in my life. And I've had some really interesting experiences that statistically would be said to be impossible. Um, or very, very highly unlikely, but they've happened over and over in my life. Um, so yeah,
So did that open you up to um, being aware more of your intuitions, being aware more of paying attention to the signs, and I think it's common that we'll go to this default, and the
oh yeah.
default is what we're familiar with. But when you have these kind of experiences, everything is new.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
And the mind would say, oh no, whatever, but the spirit, the intuition is feeling this light and this energy and this possibility. Like, did you go through, and it never ends, as you and I were talking. No, realistically, it just keeps going deeper, wider, broader, from within, without.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I've been noticing it kind of like a spiral and coming back to things that I thought I'd already healed and and it's like coming back to them from a different perspective, from a wider, different angle, reveals and sheds light on new aspects and parts of that I had no idea were in that situation. So that's been happening a lot too. And yeah, to answer your question, it really has brought me into more in tune with my intuition. But I find intuition to be a funny thing, because sometimes it feels like it's a very fine line between intuition and our fears and anxiety, and really learning how to discern that has been a big challenge for me because, like you said, we have these these boxes or these lenses that we put on that we see the world through, and sometimes they're not necessarily helpful, and we can take that as being intuition or a gut feeling. And sometimes it's just like an emotional reaction or a protection mechanism. Um, so it was really interesting to see these stark contrasts of what it was for me to feel intuitive at the very next moment, feeling completely anxious and like bouncing back and forth. And it was very exhausting.
I'm glad you're
And just,
mentioning that, Dominic, because that's pretty common in the awaken process or when we go to new levels of awareness.
mm,
There will be multiple selves, almost, I want to say, different, whether it's our present self, our past self, our fear self, our faith self, our, whatever that is, that will come up. And I, as a healer, because you're a very, very powerful, strong healer, to know that this is part of the evolution, part of what we transcend through. And I know I've done that so much in my life. It just doesn't end. I don't want it to, because I want to continue to have expansion,
yeah.
and having that expansion means, okay, then we're gonna become aware of what's been contracting, or blocking the flow, and we don't judge it. And that's what I hear from knowing you too. It's an awareness, right?
Yeah, but I think also like even if there is judgment, I think that's part of it. And it's like vacillating or oscillating or whatever the word is between them. And I do think that judgment can be revealing if we bring awareness to it. So I
Oh.
don't necessarily like to prescribe or subscribe to judgment being a bad thing because if we bring awareness to it, it's a doorway to freedom, is it can be. Um, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, now let's talk about specifically how you work with people. Okay. And on the energy frequency, and I'd like you to share what you have found most helpful in helping people, and what are some of the main obstacles you find
Mm,
in working with people too, and the
okay.
level of healing, because you really do a lot of deep work.
Thanks.
Mm.
So to start, I've put the Reiki aside. I don't
Okay.
really utilize that modality. I have been studying pranic healing, which is incredible. If you haven't heard of it, I highly encourage you to look it up.
What
Um,
about for our listeners, just briefly, what
mhm.
is it? I mean, the story behind it's fascinating, you
Yeah.
know, but just briefly, I think it'd be worth saying what that is.
Yeah, definitely. So it's a very structured form of energy healing, and it it is based off of two principles or two laws. Well, the principles are cleansing and energizing. We do a ton of cleansing because there's already so much prana here waiting to be absorbed by the body, but we have all of these blockages within us from the food we eat, from the environmental toxins, from the emotional and mental conversations that we have, the patterns that we have. So these create disruptions in the energy body and in the meridians. So pranic healing is really focused on going in and cleansing all of that out and then energizing. And oftentimes the prana from the sun, from the earth, from the air, from the water, and from the divine just gets totally absorbed into the body. We're made to absorb this prana and have a relationship with it. And so those two principles, cleansing and energizing, and then the law of life force or prana, and then the law of self recovery. So, meaning that the body already has an innate ability to heal itself. So we clean out what is diseased or congested and depleted and then flood it with fresh prana. We have specific techniques to pull from the divine, to pull from the earth, from the sun, from the air, and flood the body with fresh prana so it can kickstart its own innate healing ability. And um, there's a quote by Saint Augustine that says miracles are it's this is paraphrased, but miracles are not opposed to nature. It's just what we understand about nature. And so I really find pranic healing to be very structured. There's tons of protocols for so many different physical, mental, emotional ailments. And it's like you open up the book and it's like a recipe, a cookbook. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this many times, and you'll get this result.
Mhm.
So it's a system that can pull anybody off the street and learn how to do this. And it's really inviting the the knowing that we all have the abilities. Like some of us are born with more clairvoyance or clairaudience or clairsentience,
Mhm.
but the fact is we all have this ability, and pranic healing has really created a solid foundation for my intuitive work as well.
Now, you rarely touch the body, right? It's all
Yeah,
energy, what you're talking about.
right. I do also do Acu Detox or Acu Wellness, which is a 5 needle point ear acupuncture.
Mm,
And I've been combining the two. So whenever I do that ear acupuncture, I do touch the body because I'm using needles. But with the energy work, with pranic healing and intuitive, there's no touch at all.
mm. That is just so fascinating. And what, just significantly, what are some of the areas you found people really, it stands out, they really get help with, and those who don't?
Yeah. I've been really curious about stress lately
Mhm.
and just seeing how, in a way, we're like addicted to it. I believe, and I could be wrong about that, but it seems like chronic stress, distress
Mhm.
is really infectious and easily spread. And there's something about it that's also like familiar and sweet not in a familiar way, so I feel like we've created these patterns of going to it. It's familiar. And so I find that all of us operating in that way and bouncing off of each other is really contributing to the way that the world is right now. And if we can find ways to really process chronic stress and turn it into eustress or good stress, man, we could really change things, giving people tools and recognizing like stress is just energy and it's energy patterns that we're comfortable with, even though it's uncomfortable, it's familiar. And so that's one of the main challenges that I found with myself and others that I'm working with. There's these patterns of stress that really get activated before um, patterns of like calm, restoration, and connection. There's almost this activation of like self-protection, which makes sense because until recently, we were living pretty wildly and we had to protect ourselves,
Mhm.
so I don't know, there's a lot to that question, Judy.
Yeah, there really is. You used a word, numb. You know
Mm,
that it's there. I have found in my years of working with people that it's kind of based on this concept that you could take a person out of prison, but most of the time they don't even know they're in it. Okay.
mm,
And numbness, being numb, and to waken that up, these energies and the feelings, and then all of a sudden people start feeling like emotions and sensations that they have not felt most of their life or ever. But
yeah,
I like the term to feel is to heal, with the idea that you're giving people hope, you're educating people, you're empowering people, you're showing them a way, which means that all this other kind of feeling comes up purposefully. It's needed, just like the grieving, people,
yeah,
it's amazing how they can shut that off. Okay. Do not feel sad, do not feel any grieving, and just be whatever. But that's an example that will propel us into some of the strongest aspects of our spirituality and our
mm,
awakeness. Like these suppressed emotions are also powerful tools for healing, wouldn't you say?
oh yeah, for sure. And I really like what you said about the numbness, how you brought that back up, because it's like there's veils. We have these veils or these lenses, or like, and it's clouded. And how are we supposed to know that there's something different when we've been living for years and decades with these veils on, with these clouded eyes? And sensory experiences and mental and emotional thoughts. It's like a vicious cycle that all feeds each other. How does one get out of that if that's all they know?
Mhm.
And I think that's where the intuition comes into play, because that's when spirit can really start talking and start creating shifts, but it takes effort. But if people aren't really connected in that way, it's like, wow, how can we break out of that? um
If we don't, here's a common thought form that I hear from people. They just don't want to be on this earth anymore.
yeah.
This is not home. This is not where they want to be. And I just want to say, excuse me, okay? We have agreed or been picked for some reason, whatever. We're here. And I relate to that because I used to feel that way too.
Yeah,
Like,
me too.
oh my gosh, this makes no sense on this earth, and these structures, these systems, organizations makes no sense. But the more I went within in the spirit world, the more I went within my higher self and being and connection, I'm having a whole different opinion about how incredible this planet really is.
Yeah. I completely agree, and I'm grateful that you shared that, and that's alive for you as it is for me.
Mhm.
And I also I remember saying, like, I don't ever want to come back here. Like, please let this be my last time here. And I don't feel that way anymore. And it's interesting because the world appears to be getting crazier and crazier and crazier. Yet there's also so many beautiful things happening as well. And yeah, there's a lot here too, because it takes a lot of effort to go
Mhm.
inward. It's very easy. There's so many things grabbing for our attention. And it's so easy to get swept up in that, especially if we're feeling overwhelmed and stressed. Like, I don't know about you, but there's times where I'm just like, and I just get on my phone just to try to relax a little bit. And even though it gives me this moment of like dopamine hits, it ends up creating a cycle if I'm not aware of it, and then that's precious time that I could be going within.
Mhm.
So I hear you. And I guess the question is, what can we do
Mhm.
to make that more readily available in the thought forms
Mhm.
that are floating around? Like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I do. I do. And that's what I call conscious living.
Mm,
Okay. The more I can be here now, okay, I don't have to know the 6 year plan, the 5 year plan, maybe the 6 month plan. Okay. But the newer version of myself, of what I want to be, because I'm finding nothing in the past. I, I'm truly finding this. The way I built business in the past, the way I built a lot of things in my life in the past is all getting reconstructed right now. Things
mm,
are getting, it's like I can't do it that way anymore. Oh my gosh, I don't feel that anymore either. And I don't feel that. So they're so, and again, as we're experiencing these timelines shifting, time. Oh my gosh, what is that anymore? I
yeah.
don't know. Years ago, the Apache medicine man who worked with me for quite a while, over and over and over, he would say, "Don't be a slave to," and he'd point to his watch, TikTok, "don't be a
Mm,
slave to time." That is like the worst thing we could do,
mm,
versus in being about our creativity. And to answer your question a little further, it really has come to raising my awareness of self-worth,
mm,
love, and gratitude. And starting my day, which I'd love to hear how you start your day, or what do you practice to, keep that frequency at a place where you want it to be, so gratitude is real important. It's real important to send love, light, gratitude, even for the people I feel challenged with. That's very important, or I'm stuck in a lower frequency that way.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I wrote this down because when I think of you and your healing, I just breathing, I'm sure you've done a lot with that in working with your people in moving the energy is also through the breath work.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting you bring that up because I've been every morning, pretty much every morning, going outside in the grass, my bare feet, and doing different pranayama, different breath exercises, and using my mind and intention to direct the energy and where it's going, what I'm releasing, what I'm bringing in. So it's really utilizing the intuition as well as the intellect and sharpening the intellect. Like both of them are super important.
Mm-hmm.
And our minds are very powerful, and we can, I mean, there's a saying, energy flows where attention goes, or something like that. And what I've been learning in pranic healing in the spiritual practice, which is called arhatic yoga, um, the mind is so potent. And if we can continue to sharpen it and learn to utilize it and blend it with the intuition, it'll take us really far. But there was something that I wanted to mention on what you were sharing before. Um, have you heard of the 100th monkey experiment?
Yeah, but maybe some of the listeners haven't.
Yeah. So
I love
from,
it.
yeah, and this is just a very paraphrased version, but apparently there was this one monkey that was being studied, and I forget what part of the world, it might have been in Asia somewhere, but this baby monkey started washing these sweet potatoes that they ate. And then uh, or the mom started washing the sweet potatoes, and then she started teaching her kids, and then the kids were sharing it with other people in the local monkey community. And then at a certain point, it just completely changed the consciousness of all of those species of monkeys all over the world. So they all started utilizing this technique of cleaning the sweet potatoes before they ate them. And so it makes me curious, and it kind of brings me back into hope and inspiration. But how many of us would it take to really alter consciousness completely? And I think we're in the middle of it. I think, and that's why we're watching all these things that seem kind of wild, because things are shifting and changing right before our eyes. And it brings me into feeling hope and inspiration and realizing how important hope and inspiration is, and or how they are important. And if one person, say one person in their, in a year inspires 10 people, okay, and each one of those 10 people inspired 10 people, within a year or two, 100 people are being inspired by that one person choosing to live consciously, like you were saying, Judy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, wow, being one person is incredibly important. We actually can have a lot of impact and a lot of value by choosing to do the work first and finding that hope, finding that inspiration, bringing awareness into what our emotional reactions are, what triggers us, what limiting beliefs we might have, what veils we have, and starting to go in and do that work, which is challenging at times for sure, but taking that initiative, other people are going to sense that, and they're going to be curious, and it's going to wake something up in them too. So that kind of reminds me of the 100th monkey experiment as well.
So
Yeah.
you're bringing up a good point, Dominic. because that monkey, was washing the sand off of the potatoes, right?
Mhm.
And then the other monkeys on other islands had no idea, but what activated was a knowing. It was
Yeah.
just an osmosis, a knowing.
Mhm.
Okay. I think that is what, and I'm just getting chills talking about this. That I believe is what's happening right now. There's this knowing going on in people like, wait a minute, something doesn't quite feel right about this. Or
Mhm.
may wait a minute, I just heard I have 6 months to live, or I just heard this diagnosis, and if I take this, then I'm going to be fine the rest of my life. But then there's this feeling of, oh, wait, there's this knowing of there might be more to this life consciously. And for people to be open and aware of this mind, like you said, mind, body, spirit connection, it is a magnificent symphony to me.
Mhm.
And to be able to, oh, wow, we can eat these potatoes without the sand. It's just there. It's just
Mhm.
this knowing that starts showing up. And in the beginning of our talk, I'm circling back around here now.
Mhm.
You mentioned a Zen proverb, and I think
Oh,
this is good for all of us to remember no matter what, because as we know, the path of awakening is not for weaklings. Okay, it's
mm,
I mean it's waking up to our spiritual authenticity of who we really are, who we've come here to be, and to believe in that, and to remember this Zen proverb.
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not for the faint of heart, especially whenever all of our ideas we start wrestling with these ideas, and it can be quite scary as well. But the Zen proverb um, is before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. And to me, it feels like there's not just one aha moment. There's continuous aha moments that are like stepping stones that keep taking us to where we're going. And I don't know about you, but for me, the more I've had some of these aha moments, the more I realize like I really have no idea what's going on. I'm just doing my best and attending to what comes up. And but I really have no freaking idea. This place is pretty interesting and strange and wild and beautiful and hard and all the things. And it kind of reminds me of, who are we to say what's good and evil, what's good and bad?
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of the story of Adam and Eve eating from the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. And I've just reflected on my own life. Most of the things that were like really horrible and challenging ended up being some of the greatest gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so who are we really to know
Mm-hmm.
right in this moment what's good and bad, when a lot of the times things that are bad and challenging bring deeper and deeper awareness.
And I think for me, it propels me into change. Okay.
Yeah.
When things just don't have the flow in it, and things are getting backed up, or just it's just not working. Oh well, and when I don't want to say ignore it. There's a timing of the soul. Okay,
Mm,
it happens at the right second when there's finally the, oh my gosh, I get it now. Oh,
mm,
okay, this is hitting me in the face, and I'm getting every sign and signal. Dominic, I've learned whatever it takes is what it takes. Okay. We
mm,
don't have to beat ourselves up for it, or that expression, I should have been further along, or I should have, whatever, throw that all out the window. It is what it is. This is our journey, and to respect our authenticity with it, and I love how you're, wow, just even in the few years I've known you, I just see this expansion with you, and what you're doing. And like you were sharing, playing the music now with what you're doing. Is everything you do in person, or do you do any remote?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. So I have been cultivating these events with ear acupuncture, meditation to get in touch with the higher soul and bring those subtle frequencies down into the cells and activate in the cells. Also in that workshop, Pronic healing, group energy healing, and then instrumental guitar. So all of those currently are all in person. But I am a certified health and wellness coach through the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching. And I'm also a pranic healer. So I can do those things in person or over Zoom or the telephone. There's a lot culminating right now, and I feel there's a lot opening up, and these options and opportunities are going to continue expanding. And I have a few other opportunities that are showing up. So I can work both in person and over Zoom. Just some of the workshops are only in person right now.
Yeah. Okay. How can people reach you? What is the best way for them to get in contact with you that might have some questions, or they might want to be involved in your work, or they might want to come to one of your workshops?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So I have a Google business page. It's called Inner Reflection Wellness, INNER space reflection wellness. You can reach me on there. You can see reviews there. It's connected to my Facebook and Instagram page. I currently do not have a website up yet, but you can send an email to innerreflectionwellness@gmail.com, and that'll come right to me. And I would love to answer any questions or work with anybody if anybody's curious. That is curious about the work that I do. And I would, if you do reach out to me, say that you heard me on Judy's podcast, and I will definitely give you a discount.
That's awesome. Oh, Dominic, thank you so much for doing this with me today, and just honor and respect you so much. Wish you the very, very best. And I just know, your light in the expansion and helping people is so needed on this planet, and very welcomed at the same time. So
thank you, Judy.
All right. We will be in touch again, I am sure.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.